colorized copy of our budget in the folder that I
Gotcha.
provided to you. When I send it to the parish, I take the color out of it, but it's helpful to see that when you're looking at our budget, that the previous years are in blue, the current year is in gold, and then the proposed budget is in green. So it kind of helps. It's also bigger than what you're going to see in your book there. So I brought that for that reason.
Perfect.
So.
How's Lacombe coming?
Well, it depends on what you're asking. So if you're asking about the condition of the roof that we repair, that we're in the process of getting a new roof, then we have put that out for quotes. If you're talking about the replacement library, the board approved money, or they designated money for the architectural work that needs to be done at the last meeting.
Yeah, because that and Robert, they're the only two I worry about. So. Oh wait, no, and we have a special facility in Mandeville that you bought for the trucks, right? For the.
Yes, so we have our technical services and maintenance facility in Alamosa, which is just north of Coop Drive, and we were able to get a small space for our mobile library facility where we can park the van for that. So that
In
is
District 11, just to rub it in.
Yeah.
All right, Mary, let us know when we're ready.
We're ready.
All right. Let me get to my thing.
Okay, so I've provided you all with a navy blue folder there. You'll see in the front pocket our strategic plan, which lasts from 2023 through 2028. And so a lot of the things that we are working on for the library system have to do with the goals outlined in our strategic plan. So if you're wondering, we're talking about what our plans for the future are and what we have in our budget to expend. There's reasons behind all of those things, and that's where this comes from. And since some of you are brand new, you would not have seen the strategic plan that covers 2023 to 2028. I included a copy for you in that navy blue folder there. I also have a copy of my business card, so if you have any questions, you all have my email address and also the phone numbers for the administrative office. The answers to the questions that you asked were provided ahead of time. I wasn't able to do it quite in one page because, as you'll see when we go through, some of these questions have different answers depending on whether or not we win our millage election. So some of these questions had two different answers, two different possibilities, and it just wouldn't fit on one page. In the folder that I provided to you, I have it organized on tabs, questions 1 through 5, and we'll start with the first one. You asked specifically that we provide an overview of the library, the number of employees, the people served, programs, 2024 accomplishments thus far, and our future plans. So, as an overview of the library, and these statistics are the year-end statistics of 2023. We have 12 public locations across the parish, 152 employees, 105 of those are full-time and 47 of them are part-time. We have 61 active cardholders, and 61,000 active cardholders, and when I mean by active, they've used their card in the last year. We have a larger number that's used their card in the last 3 years, but went with active because I thought that was the most relevant. We have 200,000 sessions of Wi-Fi use last year, 982,000 items circulated, and that's checking in and checking out, 575,421 visits, and 90,450 computer sessions. So items circulated are the checking in and checking out happens across the desk. About 61% of those are physical items, so people in this parish still like to have a book in their hand. The remaining is virtual. The visits is the door count. So the number of people coming into the library each day is recorded. The computer sessions is every time somebody sits down at a desktop computer and uses it in the library. And then the Wi-Fi is every time someone uses our Wi-Fi, they connect to the Wi-Fi to use it in the library or outside of the library. We have both wireless outside and inside the library. So in 2023, we had 2,713 programs with 44,718 people attending. And in 2023, we had 8,006 patrons registered for summer reading. And when you start looking at 2024, right now we are on track to break a million in circulation and over 600,000 in visitors. We're just about there. If we continue on track for the last quarter of the year, that is where we are going to be. A lot of what we have been working on is listed here as well. We have that refined card system that met all the requirements of the new law, Louisiana Revised Statute 25225. We had everything in place right at the beginning of the year, and that was more than 6 months ahead of time. For strategic planning implementation, we worked on several of the different goals. Some of them are going to come to fruition in different parts and pieces over the next year or two. One of the things that we were working on at goal number 4 was St. Tammany Parish Library will serve as a platform for creativity, innovation, and community interaction. We put on 4 community art shows. We did them with the high schools and middle schools in the parish, and we had really great participation. It was really exciting. We have been working on mobile library service. That came out of strategic planning, the different focus groups that we did, and interviews that we did. We had concerns about the library reaching people who cannot reach us, so people who are shut in, people who live in a nursing home, any various numbers of situations like that. And so mobile library service, we determined that that would fulfill that need. So we worked over the last year to acquire a small space so that we would have a place to park that vehicle. We ordered our book hauler vehicle, which is, it's not just a van with boxes of books. Actually, it is a van where the carts lock into the sides of the vehicle with a lift on the back. So you can go to a co-center or a nursing home and you can put those carts on the back and lower it and bring the carts in so that people have books to choose from. It's not just where they put something on hold. They have a little more independence in being able to choose the items that they would check out. So we have found that space. We've purchased the collection. We just hired the manager for our mobile library service. We also found, with help, we found the replacement Lacombe Library land, and we just started as a pilot site for Checkout Louisiana State Parks, where you can check out a pass to a Louisiana State Park, any Louisiana State Park, and the pass gets 1 carload of people into the state park. We have, and correct me if I'm wrong, 4 locations that are piloting this, and we just started that. As far as what our plans are for next year, we're getting ready to launch that mobile library service. We think we'll take delivery of the book hauler vehicle by December 31st. And we're also looking at books by mail for those who are shut in. And we're working on that pilot program with Coast because they have the Meals on Wheels program, so that we can provide the people who are shut in with a brochure that explains that they can call and we can help put books on hold for them. There's these kind of canvas mailing bags and you can fit up to 4 books in there. And of course, there's the shipping label on it, and when they're done, they zip it back up and flip the label over and it comes back to us at no cost to them. We have, as part of our strategic plan in making our libraries more welcoming, we're piloting a calming room at Covington for those who might be overwhelmed by, the noise, the lights, just being in a public place. We had to move some furniture around Covington to make that work, but we're going to be giving it a go in the new year. One of the things that we had come out of strategic planning was the desire for makerspace. and when I talk about makerspace, that's everything from a 3D printer to a sewing machine, that type of thing where you can make something. That came out of the information that we collected from our strategic plan itself, but also in speaking to the patrons at Slidell at what they wanted to see when their branch was expanded or renovated. But you got to start somewhere, and we have space at Madisonville already, so we're going to be piloting that to figure out, what is going to work best for our patrons. Of course, we are preparing for the 2025 millage election and conducting those educational efforts that we'll have to do. We also are going to be working with architects and engineers for Lacombe and Slidell capital work. And we are very excited about people counting being installed in all of our branches. Right now, for door count, I have like a simple beam of light that somebody crosses and I get a count at the end of the day. But that doesn't tell me what, except for anecdotally what the branch managers say, it doesn't tell me that I had 200 more people at 3 o'clock in the afternoon than I did when I opened at 9. It doesn't give that type of information. And so we, with all of these different things going on, whether it's a mobile library branch or a makerspace service or whatever, we are planning on using that data-driven information about when we have the most patrons in the branch so that we can shift staff around. We're not planning on significantly adding to our staff. So the second question was explain the increase in expenses for 2025. And as I said before, I do have, and I don't remember who I mentioned this to, I have the answer, but I also have another copy of our budget. The copy that I provide to the parish and is in your parish packet is that black and white one. My copy has blue for previous years, gold for current, and green for the proposed budget. But our increase in expenses can be attributed to a couple of different things. One, so our new services, the books by mail service requires postage and mailing supplies. Lobby stop service, which you roll into the lobby and put out all of the books for them to choose from, is a new vehicle, and we'll make our final payment either right at the end of this year or next year. I budgeted it for next year. Then, of course, we'll have increased fuel and insurance costs for having an extra vehicle. Also, looking at payroll, 2025 for us has an additional pay period. We pay our employees every 2 weeks, not twice a month. And it just so happens that every 11 years you end up with an additional pay period, and 2025 is the additional pay period year. We also have 2 new positions, human resources, and then the mobile library branch manager. And although that person has started right now, their replacement hasn't been filled yet. So when we get to 2025, we'll realize that extra position. Our FICA and retirement lines were adjusted based on our new adopted salary scale that was adopted during the October 2nd, 2024 board meeting. Supply costs have increased. That's just inflation. Computer software and online services for patrons have regular amounts that they go up each year. And so we are planning on using our fund balance to cover the cost of the millage election, but otherwise our budget is balanced. So if you'll see the bottom line of the budget there, it's going to show $247,421 over, and because it's a one-time cost, we're using our fund balance to do that. Our 2025 summer reading program is going to cost us a little bit more because we had a lot of free performers this year, so when you're comparing the two. And also this upcoming summer, the theme is Color Your World, so it's all about art, and art supplies do cost a little bit more. Our advertising, promotion, and printing lines are higher so that we can conduct a millage education effort. And those are the main things as you're looking down our budget where you'll see a difference in costs. But like I said, I did include a color copy of the budget to help you review it. For question number 3, you asked what would be our estimated fund balance on 1/1/2025 and 1/1/2026. So our fund balance is any unused money that we have at the end of the year. It becomes prior year's operating revenue or our fund balance. And as of December 31st, 2023, the cash on hand or savings was $5,881,020. And this is half of what we need to operate the library in any given year. But these savings are dedicated to very specific purposes. They're just not sitting there. The actual fund balance on January 1st, 2025 is predicted to be $5,764,390. And as of January 1st, 2026, $5,449,390. And if you turn the page there, you can see I went out one further year just so that you could understand. There's a scenario where the millage passes, and then there's a scenario where the millage does not. And this is under tab 3. So, if our millage passes at the end of the year 2026, we would have $4,929,390. If our millage fails in March, then we will need to use our fund balance to run the library. And so if our millage does not pass in March, there is nothing left at the end of 2026. So I show both scenarios there for you. Now, as you can see, you can see what the dedications are for our fund balance on these two scenarios. There's what's dedicated for operational reserves, and that's what runs the library until we get our first significant payment of money from the parish. We usually get that in February. And in the meantime, I have to make payroll in January and into February. We have disaster and emergency funds, just in case we have a major hurricane or other disaster that we can draw from. And then we have dedications for furniture for the various capital projects. So in our fund balance, we have furniture, fixtures, and equipment projects that correspond with our capital projects list. But if you go to tab number 4, what are you planning to use your fund balance for in 2025? What we actually have budgeted for is for the library to pay the election cost of the millage election cost. I requested of the finance office, what is the worst case scenario if we are on the ballot by ourselves, how much would that take? And it was estimated that the worst case scenario could be $250,000. So that's what I budgeted for. I budgeted for the worst case scenario. And then also what is budgeted to be spent from our fund balance is the last payment for our outreach vehicle. And that will be due in January. And then the dedications are just as I listed them a second ago. The operational reserves that runs the library until we get our first significant portion of the millage from the parish, our disaster and emergency funds, and then the fund dedications for Lacombe, Mandeville, and Slidell furniture projects. But again, if that millage fails in 25, we undedicate it all and we run the library on what we have. So, which brings us to the last question you had is, what is your capital plan for facilities? And again, we have two scenarios. So if our millage passes in March of 2025, as part of our capital plan for facilities, we are replacing the Lacombe Library. The Slidell Library needs a roof replacement, renovation, and expansion. Mandeville right now is going to be renovated early in the year. We're having a flooding issue there at the front entrance, and we need to do some restroom renovations. We also planned for a technology upgrade, system-wide RFID, and that's going to allow for more efficient service. It's going to allow for material security and improved inventory. And right now, we have to do those things. Anything that can help streamline that means I can maybe move some of those staff members who are on the desk to other areas of the library that need it. And it would be really, really wonderful to have better security on our materials and improved inventory capabilities. If our millage fails in March of 2025, we will have to use the money that is in capital to pay for the other half of the year. So I've got about half a year's worth in savings, and I got about half a year's worth in capital. And this was not collected as a capital millage. This is our operational millage where money was set aside for capital purposes. But if it comes down to keeping the doors open and the employees paid, we won't be able to do those capital projects. So we would not be able to replace the Lacombe Library. Slidell Library, we would have to do enough to repair the roof because we are having an active leaking issue. Mandeville is already underway and actually necessary to the structure of the building. The flooding that we're having in the front is pretty serious. And we would not be able to do the technology upgrade. The remaining balance would be directed to cover the operational costs of the library in '26. And it all just happens to be related to when the millage election happens, because our election is in March. And if we win in March, there's enough time for the rolls, to be updated and for us to collect money for 2026. If we lose in March and have to wait you have to wait 6 months, we will be going out in November at that point, and the rolls are already closed, so we won't be able to collect money for '26. Anyway, those are the answers to your questions, but I'm sure that you have many more, so I am ready to answer them.
All right, Mr. Phillips, Mr. Kubel, Mr. Strickland.
Hey, thank you for coming, by the way.
Mhm.
I reviewed last meeting y'all had, and you talked to, I guess the millage is 5.78 mils, and you went to 5.35, which was no gain, and you got the same revenue. Is that how that worked?
So, this 2023's millage, which we're receiving this year, is at 578. 535, we're rolling back, to not unduly benefit from the rise in assessments. But then as far as what we are asking for in millage for the voters to vote on, it's a whole mill less.
I'm leading up to a question. Okay, so then you talked about the final payment on the facility in Madisonville will be finished in April. Mm-hmm. And you talked about some bonds that are going away, like 1.6 million and another one for 1.6, for a reduction of about $2 million for the year, which is great. Am I getting that right?
So they're not bonds.
Okay.
The only bond that we're paying on is Madisonville.
Okay.
And the last payment happens in April. And then what you see in our capital plan, those lists of projects, it used to be much bigger. We've slowly ticked them off, right? We've slowly done all of those projects. Mm-hmm. And the 1,600,000 we were collecting out of our millage, or the parish was holding it to the side for the capital list of projects that we were working on. And so when we receive our millage money, 2024 millage money, they will have put aside the last of the money that's needed to finish those projects. So we'll no longer need to collect that.
But you'd have a reduction of $2 million approximately.
Actually, it's going to be more than that.
Okay.
So, the value of a mill is more than when, we were looking at it earlier this year. So by reducing the millage and asking the voters for one whole mill less, we're going to be reducing closer to $3 million.
Right. That's what I was leading into next. So, so for 15 years, millage, what I'm worried about is, are you reducing it too much? That's what I'm leading up to, because like during the meeting, you all talked about capital projects and that, and it sounded like you weren't even going to have any capital projects the way you were discussing it. And I was thinking there got to be some money for that in your budget.
So we do have money for regular maintenance.
Okay.
We do have money for capital improvements to buildings. Like if I do need to replace a roof at Abita, like I could do that. Like we just have to plan for it. What we did last time, and I agree, our millage has lasted 15 years, right? The one that's winding down. At about year 10, we had compiled a list of everything that needed to be done because our buildings are getting older. Slidell's 35 years, Covington was 37 years old. We have a couple of new buildings. Madisonville's 10 years old. And then, South Slidell is even a 10-year-old building. But what we did was we compiled the list of capital projects. We went to the parish, and this was about 10 years ago, and we said, these are all of the needs, the capital needs of our buildings, and the voters had allowed us to use money for capital purposes if we had any left over. Would you allow us to roll up by a certain amount, because we
Right.
had the ability to do that?
Excuse me.
Would you approve that so we can get these projects done? And the parish council at the time, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, I don't remember exactly the date, said yes. So our plans are to just ask for what we need. I think it's really important that we ask the voters for only what we need. And if we end up in a situation where we need more money because there is a capital need that we did not expect, when in probably about every 4 years, the assessor looks at the property values and makes adjustments. When we roll back again, we'll have a little bit of room between where we are and the top millage that we could take. And at that point, if we had another list of capital concerns, we would present that to the parish council and make that request.
Okay.
But I think as far as the most important thing to the library is getting its operational millage approved, and I think it's really important in the atmosphere that we're in to only ask for what we need right now.
Okay. And then the last point was during that meeting, you did a great job of explaining. A lot of people think you have a $12 million surplus or whatever, and you broke it out with that, and I think you did a little bit of explaining it, but I wanted to get it on tape. Like, you did a great job of explaining there is no extra money. Like, you talked about $6 million cash reserve for specific operations and that,
So-
and another $6 million for capital. And so just so
Yes.
people understand,
I
there's no
think
extra money.
The confusion is, and if you were to look at our auditor's report, the auditor's report includes your receivables. So I get about I don't have the exact number in here. I get about $12.5 million every year for ad valorem taxes. And so when the audit is done for 2024, it's going to show I have this much cash in reserve, and it's going to show the library's going to get $12.5 million for the next year to
Right.
run. If you do that same audit in 2025 and we don't win the election, then that $12.5 million, $13 million it'll be zero. It won't be receivable because you understand what I'm saying? So
Right,
I
but
think that
you sort of explained what you needed that for too, like the
Yeah.
Lacombe Library, that money was already going to be used to fix the roof and things of that
But
nature.
I
yeah.
think what the confusion is when people look at the audit, they see you've got about $6 million in cash,
Mm-hmm.
and then it looks like you have another $12 million just there. But it's not cash. It's what's
Right.
next year's money. And so I think that's where that confusion comes from. But our savings does have purpose. They have dedicated purposes, and you can see them in that spreadsheet.
Okay, I just wanted to get it on tape so people understand, and thank you so much for your
You're
time.
welcome.
All right, next up is Mr. Kugel, then Mr. Strickland.
Hey, Kelly, thanks for coming. Thanks for answering those questions. And thank you, Vice President Belknap, also coming to this meeting. I did first want to mention, just for the benefit of my colleagues and the public, that the last legislative session, the legislature passed and the governor signed Act 736, now revised statute 25-220.1. And the difference, and this is why it matters, is I think historically the council had to approve or disapprove your budget, correct?
I've always come before the Finance
Right.
Committee.
So now the legislature decided to give us the power to amend it, and just for the public to know. Some of the things that people brought up to me from the other night, I think it was the 30th, I think it was the morning meeting, some concerns. Could you explain first off, and I maybe this is incorrect, but this is just what was told to me, that the Causeway branch, it's a lease for $15,000 a month?
So Causeway, yes, the lease is $15,625 a month.
And I just looked on Google Maps, and the distance between the Causeway and branch and the other branch in Mandeville is 2.8 miles.
Yes.
Just to the average person, that's going to be a little confusing. If you could
So,
explain.
our Causeway branch opened in 1999, and it opened because our Mandeville location has no meeting spaces. And so Causeway serves as kind of the overflow to kind of catch the number of people Mandeville had, in 1999, had quite a significant amount of people coming in and out of the door. And so the board at the time decided to rent Causeway so that they could have meeting space, because there was meeting space in Slidell, there was meeting space in Covington. And it has served the parish since 1999. Now, is it less than 3 miles apart? Absolutely it is. When we set about kind of making a decision, were we going to continue to collect money for capital purposes? That was one of the projects that was kind of left on the table. We really thought, as you do, that it makes a whole lot of sense to have one location and not to be renting. The library really doesn't like to rent its locations because they tend to be long-term, no matter what you do. No community wants to give up their library, even if it's 2.5 miles away. However, what we had planned was to see if we could find some land so that we could consolidate those two locations. We did not, in 1999, have the ability to use our operational millage for capital purposes. That did not happen until this 15-year millage that we're finishing. We had to get the legislature to pass something, and we had to go to the voters specifically for that language. So in 1999, they did not have that capability. But, we do now. It's just a matter of, how would we combine those two? Would we move it? There's a lot that goes into that. We're very much aware of that, though.
And the next thing was, which again, this is concerns that have been brought to me, that $700,000 for the furniture. I'm sure you're ready for this because you were asked about it. $700,000 for replacing the Slidell furniture, which is the Robert Road branch and
Yes.
Pontchartrain, or just Robert Road?
Robert Road. So the Pontchartrain branch, I think, has only been open for about 5-6 years. We've replaced the computers once. 9 years. Whoa. Okay. I have it in my head wrong. Time passes quickly. 8 years. It's Robert Road. So when you look, if you were to pull the spreadsheets, if you were to compare spreadsheets side by side, and of course you don't have the capital plan spreadsheet, I don't think. But if you look under tab number 3, and you see those two scenarios of fund balances, you'll notice that it's not just Slidell that's there. It's Slidell, Lacombe, Outreach, Causeway, and Mandeville Furniture. And basically, if you compare the capital projects list and the operational, the savings furniture projects list, they correlate. So we made the commitment 10 years ago, as we started doing these capital projects, to refresh and preserve and maintain what we had, that we would address the furniture from our savings, and the parish would address the buildings from the capital money that was set aside. So at this point, now that Causeway is done, I will have replaced and refreshed the furniture at all but 2 locations. So we have not done Mandeville yet. Mandeville is going to happen when we redo their carpet and fix the flooding issue in the front. And then there was money set aside for Slidell. So Slidell's furniture is 35 years old, and that furniture really does have a lifetime. And we made that estimate, that $700,000 estimate, based on what it took for us to refresh all of the furniture at Covington, which was replaced at 37 years old. And that cost us about $560,000. And Covington is only, it is 15,000 square feet. Slidell is 18,000 square feet, and we were planning to add a little extra space to fit in the services that we heard about during our strategic planning process. So it's a bigger facility. The idea behind replacing the furniture at these buildings is to lower the height of the shelving, to provide better sight lines for the staff so they can better see what's going on. Our security cameras are better able to see what's going on. But that being said, when you're looking at this, $700,000 is not budgeted for the 2025 year. It gets budgeted when we're ready to spend it, and the board has to approve that. So Causeways was budgeted for this year because the Causeway project happened this year. It may be, it may be 3 years before we get to, another 3 years before we get to the point where we would spend that money. But we don't want to have a savings that just is a pile of money with no purpose. Like, we show what's dedicated and what it's meant for. So that's where that comes from, that 700,000.
So again, this is some of the questions that were asked me. Do you guys like take bids? How do you figure out?
Absolutely.
And is it the same way the school board does it? Is it different?
I can't speak to the school board. I can tell you that we have a set of rules in our Library Board of Control rules and regulations that's based upon best practices by the legislative auditor, and also there's legal things that go into bids, thresholds. So furniture is, it's kind of like a supply. So basically for us, we look at furniture, fixtures, and equipment. Anything over $30,000 has to go out to bid. So it's advertised in the newspaper, it's on our website, all of that.
And you said, I think it's in number 5. Obviously, I mean, you made this budget details because you are concerned that the millage may or may not pass, and you have to plan for that accordingly.
Yes.
And, I had someone tell me last night, for whatever reason, they just don't plan to vote for it. And that's their decision. It's it's not a constituent of mine, it's just somebody. So, and I think you're being responsible by trying to plan for that, because it is possible. And we know how sometimes St. Tammany votes on any particular thing.
Absolutely.
I guess the thought is just to go to the 700,000 thing, because that is something that is, it's kind of, the number just is huge. It's over $500,000.
Councilmember, all of our mics are hot. I just want to let you know.
Okay. If let's say, if the council does amend the budget and reduce that to $350,000, for instance, just theoretically, what would be the practical effect to that?
Okay, well, first, it's not budgeted to be spent at all. It's just shown as dedicated. So it would not affect the 2025 budget at all if you were to tell us only $350,000. We would have to make a decision. So maybe Slidell is the branch that doesn't get the furniture refresh that the other 11 branches got. If that's what the council wished to do, then that's what we would do.
But couldn't they refresh up to $350,000 of it?
We could get some tables and chairs. We would not be able to reduce the height of the shelving. The cost of steel is pretty significant when you're talking about library shelving, and that's where the most of the money goes to, is the library shelving.
Okay. I guess just last question. I'm a little, so you're saying you don't plan to necessarily spend it, but it sounds like you're saying you do believe it's justified that it would cost that much? It's
not in the 2025 budget. It is not budgeted to be spent in the 2025 year.
Okay.
The estimate comes from our experience with all of the other 10 branches furniture projects that we have completed over the last 10 years.
So it does include the shelves where the books are as well. It's not the chairs and the tables only.
No,
it's the shelves.
All of it. And the reason why we did the work at Covington where we replaced the shelving like that was so that we could see better, so that the people at the desk, because not eons ago, but the idea behind putting furniture in a library was to pack as many books in as you possibly could, right? Kind of like the warehouse idea here. But it's become more important now, based on the usage that we have in the library, to have more study tables, to have more study carrels, and for the staff to have better sight lines and really be able to see everything that's going on in the library for security purposes. And so that means that we kind of have to make some decisions. So that means reducing the height of the shelving, which means reducing the amount of the collection a little bit. You have to kind of weed through and figure out which books are not checking out. If it's not checking out, let's take that one off the shelf and do what we need to do to get the collection down so we can lower the height of the shelving.
Right.
It's basically addressing the fact that our libraries were designed before we even had internet. And so the furniture needs of the libraries have changed over the years. If the parish council did not want us to spend that much money on Slidell, we would just refresh what we could. But it is not budgeted to be spent this year. It is not part of the 2025 budget, so any adjustment that you made would not affect next year's budget.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Strickland. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Pat.
Well, Kelly, I just want to say thank you for coming this morning. I'm just going to make a couple of comments. I'm always impressed by your presentation. I'm always impressed with your strategic planning, so thank you so much for all that you do for our library. I just want to, one more thing, when you go to, after the millage, and you said you're going to do some marketing, are you going to make some available to us? Because there's some of us
Absolutely.
that want to go out and promote this millage, which I'd be one of them, so.
Well, so, we have to start working on that. Of course, we are not allowed to ask the voters to vote yes, but we are able to provide educational information. And so we will be working on that over the next couple of months.
Sure, so as we go out to our HOA meetings and different things, we can have
Absolutely.
things to hand out to our constituents.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Strickland?
Okay, I would like to just thank you for being so detailed and transparent with your budget. And also for you being, accepting what you need as opposed to, a lot of departments what they want, especially in a time of budget crunching like we're doing right now. So just thank you for being so detailed, and we hope and pray that the millage passes, but anything that we can do from you, I'm hoping for it. Thank you.
All right, next up is Mr. Corbin, and then Mr. Impastato, and then Mr. Smith after me.
Great. Kelly, I got a few questions for you, but I do
Yes.
want to commend the library and the new board. I appreciate all the effort that goes into preparing a budget like this. I know the budget was approved at the last meeting unanimously, and so I appreciate I think it was unanimously.
Yes, it was.
So I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think you're good stewards of the funds that the residents and constituents of St. Tammany provided to you. Couple of questions or comments, I guess. I'll make several. One is, in 2025, you're going to be the midpoint of your strategic plan, because it's
Yes.
23 to 28. Would the board plan any kind of like a reset, or just at least see how we're doing relative to that strategic plan in the 2025 time period, given you're at the midpoint of a 5-year strategic plan?
So what we do right now, we hadn't discussed specifically doing that. However, we do report at every board meeting how we are meeting each of these goals. So there are 7 goals, and we have staff committees for each one. They meet monthly. Although there's like 1 or 2 that sometimes these goals overlap, and so the people will shift around. But we report every month to the board on our progress, and we report at the end of the year. We report at not the end of the year. It's in March when I have my evaluation. I present like what we accomplished over the most recent year with our strategic plan. So we found that reporting on that every month to the board has really helped keep us on task and accountable. But no, we had not planned a mid-year relook and reset. We can certainly do that, though.
It might be worthwhile you just take a look and see if there's be appropriate to have a mid-period kind of
Review.
assessment.
Okay.
Okay. I saw about, I applaud you also on your reduction in your budget and your reduction in your millage. I think that just reemphasizes the stewardship you have over the funds that you provided. Unfortunately, my associate, Councilman Kugel, left, so he won't hear the answer to this, but can you explain the difference between industrial furniture versus just furniture? Because that plays significantly into a $770,000 estimate.
So, and I had to learn this the hard way when I first became assistant director for the library years ago. We did not have a significant amount in savings at all, and so we were just trying to piece together the furniture with things from Office Market and things like that. And things that you would get at an office store, furniture store, they just fall apart. There's a certain amount of what they call double rubs, that even the fabric, like you sit in a chair is one rub, you sit up from a chair, it's the second rub. And so you have to have furnishings that can endure the number of people that are going in and out of the library and sitting in the chairs and getting up from the chairs, throwing their book bags down on the table, that type of thing. It has to last a really long time, and so therefore it is more expensive. Institutional furniture is very much like the furniture that the school board uses. It's got to stand up to heavy use and all-day use. And when you're thinking about a table or a chair where, especially, and I don't have, of all the things not to have with me, Slidell Library in particular gets about 22% of our physical visits. We have the most people through the door, the most people using computers, the most just about everything. And they have significant heavy use of their furniture every day. The chairs that I have right now, the lounge chairs that I have, they were rated to last in Houston's airport for 10 years. And they've just about made it now for us 9.5 years, and I'm finally starting to see the wear in the corners, so maybe we get heavier use than Houston's airport. But you pay more for the furniture because it has to last. And the furniture at Slidell, being 35 years old, it's getting towards the end of its lifetime. But we paid a lot of money for it at the time because it needed to last. If we start using regular office furniture or the furniture that you might have in your house, we would be replacing it constantly.
Yeah, I have very few things in my house that lasted 35 years, and all I did was raise 3 kids. So I think that's an important subject. So what I hear you saying is your $770,000 estimate is based on the fact that you're using institutional furniture versus just furniture from
Yes.
a furniture store, that you're also relying on 10 branches worth of experience in coming up with that estimate. It's not like this is the first time you're shooting at this. So there's rationale and foundation behind your estimate of $770,000. You're also using use rates, which is measured by volume and the number of people that go to that place, and that weighs into how fast different furniture wears out.
Yes.
So I think your estimate is credible and reasonable based on the experience that you all have. The last thing I wanted to mention is there's 2 things I wanted to ask about. Your millage is dedicated, correct?
Yes.
Because there's been some comment in different papers about potentially rededicating portions of that. Wouldn't that require a vote of the votes of the people in order to rededicate any component of that millage?
So my understanding in speaking with Emily Couvion, yes, that is true. It is dedicated specifically for library usage by the voters. If it was going to be rededicated, it would have to be similarly rededicated for use by the voters.
And also, unlike some of the other millages and some of the other organizations, the library maintains and operates all their buildings, as opposed to the parish providing those facilities for some of the organizations that have been mentioned in concert with that rededication. Is that correct?
Yes. So we have 12 public locations. We have the administrative office and the technical services building. So I guess that's 14 locations that we have to we maintain them. The parish technically owns them, but they were bought with the library's millage money over the years. And we are responsible for maintaining them and their upkeep.
Okay.
And so you'll see those lines in our budget specifically for maintenance and upkeep of buildings.
Okay. And I appreciate your desire to distribute libraries as efficiently around the square miles of our parish, but have you looked at seeing what the delta difference is between the Slidell branch and the Slidell branch right down here? Is that probably 3 miles?
Yeah. So it's similarly. We have opened facilities to help kind of, I don't want to say deal with the overflow, but when we have a lot of use. And Slidell is our most heavily used branch. We had a branch on Pontchartrain here during the time of Katrina, and that was a rented facility, believe it or not. So that was what we were looking at, or what we were working with. All those years ago, we didn't have capital money to build new buildings. Voters hadn't approved any more capital construction projects. And so the only way that we were able to deal with the locations where we had tremendous amounts of people was to expand by renting. And so Causeway happened that way, and Pontchartrain happened that way. We lost that branch in Katrina. The water went in one side and out the other, and the books and materials were spread just all over this area. But because when we got to the point where we could replace that Pontchartrain branch, because we had our millage structured so that we could use money for capital purposes, the voters allowed us to do that. It was one of the very first projects that we were able to do with that capital money. And because we had that ability, this time we were able to buy it and not rent it anymore. But that was the situation where, we had the money that was required to do it, and it just worked out that way. In order to do Causeway the same way, we would have to, either we'd find another place to buy, whatever the situation may be, but we were replacing it because of Katrina and took that opportunity to ensure that we weren't renting again.
Okay, and just building on that a little bit, so the comparison between Mandeville and Causeway, similarly, is that I heard you just say between the difference between Slidell's main library and the adjunct right down the street, just a second,
Yep.
is they are not duplicative. They have some similar functions and they have some similar capabilities, but they are not completely duplicative of each other. And by that I mean there's significantly more meeting space, available space, other attributes available in the main library, but it does help provide support, for example, in Slidell's case, for people across town to have the opportunity to get many of the features, but not all the features that are available at the main library. Is that correct?
So that is correct. I have to say, when we opened South Slidell, we didn't lose a significant amount of door count from Slidell itself. What we heard from the patrons is they don't like to cross Gauze Boulevard. They very much like to have a library close to their home. And so I would say they don't duplicate. They do have, each has meeting space, but the same patrons who are going to South Slidell were not necessarily going to Slidell when we opened this. So the other thing to keep in mind is that Slidell does not offer all of the services that our branches on the other side of the parish offer. And that's because we haven't been able to address that space in the 35 years since it was built. So Covington's been renovated. They now have conference room, study rooms, story time room. Madisonville was built that way. Causeway has study rooms. And of course, they do have that meeting room that serves as their story time room. But our large branches on the other side of the parish have all of these services that the Slidell does not, which is why we were planning for an addition to ensure that this side of the parish had the same type of services that the other side did.
Well, thank you, Kelly. I've been to those other libraries, so I do recognize there are some things that would be added to Slidell when you do the expansion. The last comment that I'd like to make is I spend a lot of time asking lots of constituents if they support for their support of the library. And the preponderance of the people I speak with support the library and do plan to support the millage when it comes back up. They applaud you and thank you for reducing it to represent the requirements, and the support I'm seeing is very positive. So that's all I've got.
Mr. Impastato, then me, and then Mr. Smith.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
You're really doing a great job, and the preparation of everything and the way you've answered the questions is so easy to understand. I really appreciate you and everything you're doing. And I will echo what Mr. Corbett said. My constituents feel very good about supporting the library millage. I know me and my family also feel very good about it and are very motivated to get it done. You certainly provide a great service that enhances our community, and we want to see it flourish and prosper and do even better. On the millage amount, currently you're receiving how many mills?
So right now we are finishing up getting, actually I think we've gotten most of our money. The 2023 millage was 578.
You're
and
asking,
then,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
so the 2023 millage was 578.
Right.
We rolled back as not unduly benefit from the rise in assessments, with the reassessment year being this year, to 535. And what we are asking the voters for is 435.
So almost a whole mill less.
Yes, sir.
Actually, a whole mill.
Actually, a whole mill less.
Yes.
Mr. Corbett knows every little detail. But that's a big deal, right? I mean, that's something that's also, you don't hear about that very often in government. I commend you all on that. The space in Mandeville with the 15,000 per month lease, how many square feet is that location?
Is about 9,100 square feet.
And that's, what is that per square foot? What's the annual?
I do not have that off the top of my head.
Well, it sounds like it's very competitive. I didn't even know it was that big. I thought it was more like 7. That's
Well,
that's a
so
big space.
it's been expanded over the years to help to add those study rooms.
Right.
It was, and when you look at it, you kind of see the pieces of it that have been connected together, and so that's probably why it appears to be smaller than that, but it is about 9,100
is.
square feet.
And that's premium,
It's 1978 per year per
Okay.
square foot.
and that's premium real estate in Mandeville.
It's
Right.
certainly a main thoroughfare, and yes, I would say it's pretty premium real
And
estate.
you pay a flat rent. Is there any additional fees you pay to stay there?
So we do pay, I can't remember the term for it.
Is it triple net?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like at the end of the
You're
year,
paying the taxes, the insurance,
Well,
and
no taxes, all right? Do you?
No, they have to pay. The
Yeah, because-
owner has to be a nonprofit. They still probably pay property taxes.
Okay.
so there's a payment we make at the end of the year that settles that,
Yeah.
and then some of it is the upkeep of the parking lot and things like that. I think one of the reasons why the board in 1998, 1999 selected that location is they really intended it to be like an easy commuter stop.
Right.
We had pretty high prevalence of books on tape and books on CD. People would listen to those as they crossed the causeway. And then again, we were also looking for that meeting space that the Mandeville branch did not have.
Right.
So,
Well, it's a great location. I just had a couple of questions about that. I think that's it. Thank you again. And if you ever need anything, please don't hesitate to let me know.
thank you.
All right, I'm next. So Kelly, first of all, I want to commend you. You are probably one of the only agencies that not only rolled back, but lowered their millage on the renewal. So
Yep.
double kudos to you on that.
For sure.
Can you, hold on one second.
The cable is blocking. We can't, we're
The second thing I also want to is, I believe I understand one of your challenges is that, we're dealing with we no longer need physical media like we used to. A lot of more stuff has transitioned to online and things like that. And I applaud you wanting to renovate. And I do have to admit my biases. My daughters love the Slidell Library. That is our library that we go to. But I do understand, as previously once being a bad kid, I know it is really easy to hide in the stacks. So it makes sense that you want to reduce the level of the actual shelving so that your employees and your cameras can actually see. Because that was one of my best places to hide in New Orleans libraries back in the day. When we were kids, that's what we did. We were bad in the library. I do want and you don't have to answer this today, but I think this is something we need to think about just in case, to paint the picture of the nightmare scenario. Would it help at all, let's say, God forbid, the millage doesn't pass, would it help at all if you closed the Causeway branch, the Pontchartrain branch? Would that extend your run out at all?
So, I want to say luckily or unluckily, depending on how you look at this.
Yeah.
If we lost in March, we would instantly know that even if we won in November, we have to run the library for a whole year.
Right.
So we have lots of time to make those crucial decisions. The leases we lease the administrative office. And we leased the administrative office because we had to move out of Covington so that the bathrooms could quadruple in size to meet ADA standards. That lease and the lease on the Causeway branch are set to expire at the end of 2025 because I can't sign, or not 2020, I can extend into 2026, but I can't sign a lease if I don't have some guaranteed income to pay for it, right? So that just automatically happens. If I'm not going to have funding, then yes, we most likely would look at the places we're leasing and find some other place to go. Like the administrative staff would probably take over the garage at the outreach facility. But Causeway is rented, and so if we don't have money to pay rent, then, you know, that's one of the things that we'll be looking at. That decision can be made even as late as November, because we'd go out again, right, 6 months later, November. And if we lost in November, well, then that really would be the nightmare scenario, because we wouldn't have enough savings and capital to put together to last us even longer. So I think those decisions would be made in steps, and we would have enough time to make those decisions.
But would they give you any help at all? I'm just like, because
So, you know, when you're talking about buildings that aren't rented, right, if you start closing those, and you have to find a place to put those assets in air-conditioned situations, I think we would maybe look at reducing hours as opposed to actual first, you know, before closing whole library buildings.
My goal is just to
So-
paint. I want to paint the worst possible picture of.
I'm just saying
you
that
know,
we
you
would.
might lose
we
your
would
library if you vote
We
no.
would take it in steps. We
Yeah.
would probably start with hours and then go on.
Wait, then Jeff, then it's Mr. Smith.
I'll go to your question.
Yeah.
Their run rate's about slightly over $1 million a month already. So recovering $15,000 a month doesn't get that very far.
Heard that.
So I think your nightmare scenarios of what some of those scenarios could be are pretty easy to tumble to.
Gotcha. All right. Thank you, Kelly. You're doing a great job. We really appreciate you. And we're going to wish the best for the millage. Mr. Smith, take us home.
Yeah. Kelly, thank you. I don't want to be redundant, but a lot of good questions, a lot of good answers. I think your millage decisions are spot on. I think that's going to really help the parish get this thing passed. I like the way you do business too, and this presentation was excellent. But I like your business thinking. You know, it's kind of like a return on an investment. Let's not get the cheap furniture that we're going to have to replace every 2-3 years. It might be a little bit more expensive, but let's get the quality, the heavy duty, the industrial stuff. I think that's good. And you were talking about the Slide L, getting that new furniture, right? And it's got the bad roof. How bad is the roof?
Okay, so the roof is a really long story, and I'll try to keep it to the Cliff Notes version. The building was built 35 years ago, and the contractor went belly up halfway through the project. So the roofing material sat on the ground until the bond company could come in and find someone to put the rest of the building together. And they did, except when they did, not only had the material been sitting on the ground, which caused some problems, it was not installed correctly. So there was a lawsuit, and the whole roof was replaced again with brand new roof. This time it was installed correctly, and then it still leaked. And when that building opened on the very first day, there were trash cans on top of the circulation desk catching the water. There was a huge lawsuit again. And this time I was told by Terry Hand, because I sat down to ask him the whole history, that there were multiple parties involved with this lawsuit, and there was a settlement. And so that settlement money has paid to repair and patch, and also about 13, 14 years ago, put an elastomeric membrane over the top. And that's when the settlement money was used up, when they put that membrane over the top. And it sealed it up. We did not have leaks for a significant amount of time. The lifetime on that elastomeric membrane is about 10 years, and we've made it 13. We're leaking in the valleys again, so we've had some temporary repairs made, but every roofer that we have get up there says, well, it's a 35-year-old roof. You've got to replace it.
Who's your engineer, architect, is handling that?
So I don't know yet. We had the board designate the money to get an engineer architect, and the engineer architect is selected by I think the parish president, usually when it's under 500,000 for their services. So I did ask him specifically to help me get a crackerjack engineer, because obviously this has
Right.
confounded a lot of people for a long time.
35 years ago, if they had a crackerjack engineer, you may not have had those problems,
Yeah.
right? But anyhow, good luck to you with the millage. Good luck to you with all your capital improvements. I think you're being very frugal and a good steward of the tax dollars.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Mr. Kugel?
Ellie, thanks again. Just back to the, I just wanted to understand, because I think we had talked about this quite a while back, about the conference room, I think, in Mandeville. I don't know if it was at that particular location, but it sounds like part of the justification for the Causeway branch is it offers conference room that the other branch nearby does not offer.
So it offers a meeting room for the
okay.
community of Mandeville, because Slidell has
Right.
meeting space, Covington has meeting space, Madisonville has meeting space. And so Causeway needed not Causeway, Mandeville community needed meeting space for the library, so we could have our, summer reading program, the things like that, so that you don't have to stop the business of the library in order to have a library program, which is what happens at our small branches.
Okay.
But our large branches, really everything grinds to a halt when you're having a big program like that. So that was in 1999 what they were thinking. They have that meeting room. We were able to add study rooms, so Causeway provides dedicated small study rooms, just like Covington does and Madisonville does. But yes, that was part of the emphasis, was the meeting space, study room space later, and also because the Mandeville Library had such high volume of visitors, that for the amount of square footage it had at the time, the Board of Controls decided to rent Causeway.
So, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but what percentage of open time of that Causeway branch is the actual meeting rooms reserved and used?
So
What would you assume? You're going to have to guess, I'm sure.
I'm going to have to guess on the meeting room. The study rooms, I can tell you, at least anecdotally, study rooms are used all day long. It's first come, first serve. We have a lot of people there who study for the MCAT and the LSAT. They're looking for a place that's not their home to study for those big tests. And we also use that space for proctoring. So our reference librarians offer proctoring for the college students who are doing distance learning, and they have to have a place where they can be observed taking their test online. And that's just not possible at the Mandeville Library, and that's a service that we're able to offer at every other large branch across the parish, which is why Causeway
And
exists.
and this is what I think we had talked about this months ago, do you have to be a resident of St. Tammany to reserve the meeting room?
No, you do not. You have to fill out a meeting room application.
Is there any reason why that it's allowed, people outside St. Tammany can also reserve that room? Maybe there's a legal reason. I don't know.
If there's a legal reason, I don't remember it right here, right now. So I apologize, and I'll look it up for you and let you know. I think actually you'd asked that question before, and I'd sent you an email answer, and if I could pull it up on my phone, I would find it. But we do require a library card to check out library materials, right? And we require a library card to sit down at a computer, but you can be out of parish and then just show, that you're over 18 to sit down at a computer.
Right.
And the reason why we allow people out of parish to use our computers is because we do get some federal money, E-rate discount money, and so we have to make that available for everyone.
Right. And the computer thing, I understand you can't check where people live once they
And I'm
want.
trying to think, there's nothing in the policy itself that I can think of the meeting rooms.
There's no policy.
Well, no, there's a meeting room policy.
There's nothing.
Nothing in the policy.
Oh, that says it needs to be a St. Tammany resident?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's nothing in the policy that says
And the
that.
only reason I mention that is, there is an expense, and if somebody just in New Orleans say, I want to go check out the meeting room to have whatever meeting,
And we really, we do have people from out of parish who do use it. I have, the federal government will do interviews for, they have to do background checks, interviews with people. We have statewide organizations, like the Louisiana State Bar does lawyers and libraries, and they're state.
Right.
We have a lot of state organizations that just need a place in this area to conduct their meeting or business. There's, I think it's the Realtors, statewide Realtors organization does training for this area. So, we don't allow those meeting rooms to be used for business purposes. Like, you can't set up shop and sell things in our meeting room, but you can train your employees. So, we've had regional Starbucks train their employees. So it's available it may be people from outside of our parish who are using the room, but it is to the benefit of the people who live here that they're able to.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Kelly, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Kudos to everything y'all do and to your staff.
Kelly, I'm sorry, but that's
Go
one
ahead.
last one.
Yes.
When was the Covington Library updated?
Covington Library was updated. We opened in like beginning of February 2020, like just in time for COVID. Super convenient for COVID, right? We opened and shut the doors again almost. So it would have been 2020.
So, okay, so not too long ago. And so any modifications to a rail facility, who pays for those modifications to outfit the inside of the building?
So if we want to paint something, we're going to do it. But like, for instance, Causeway, they redid the bathrooms for us the last time that
Great.
we signed the lease. So little minor things we'll do on our own, but if it's something major like the bathroom at Causeway, they have to come in and because they own the building.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, thank you very much.
Great job, Kelly.
Nice job, Kelly.
Kudos.